Welcome back to the Ancestral Findings podcast. If you thought the infamous Salem witch trials of 1692 were the only incident of witch hysteria in colonial America, you're not alone. The Salem trials are the most well-known, likely because of the large number of people involved. 20 victims were unjustly executed, and hundreds more were accused and jailed before the hysteria ended. However, the events in Salem Village weren't the first or only time witch hysteria occurred in colonial America. Other incidents of witch trials and accusations have often been overlooked. Let's travel to Hartford, Connecticut, where one of the most notorious forgotten witch trials happened a generation earlier. Connecticut held a series of witch trials between the 1640s and the 1690s, with the last witch execution in the colony occurring in 1662. Of the 35 recorded witch trials in Connecticut, 11 resulted in executions, comparable to Salem, though these executions took place over a longer period and were not part of a single event. In 17th century New England, laws against witchcraft were strict, and harm didn't necessarily have to occur for an accusation or trial to take place. However, most towns avoided the trouble and expense of a trial unless actual harm was done. Before 1662, only one witness was needed to secure a witchcraft conviction, making the process swift and dangerous for the accused. Connecticut settlers faced many hardships: harsh winters, famines, conflicts with Native Americans, and illness epidemics, to name a few. These conditions often drove people to blame witchcraft for their struggles. This climate of fear and suspicion led to accusations and trials, with some of the records still surviving today. In 1647, an epidemic of unknown origin struck Windsor, Connecticut. That same year, Alice Young became the first person in the colony to be executed for witchcraft. Unfortunately, no records of her trial exist, so the exact charges remain unknown. However, we do know Alice had a daughter, Alice Young Beeman, who was accused of witchcraft 30 years later in Springfield, Massachusetts. In another early case, Mary Johnson of Hartford gave what is considered the first recorded confession of witchcraft in colonial America in 1648. Johnson was a servant who had been accused of theft 2 years earlier. After intense interrogation and whipping, she confessed not only to witchcraft, but also to using Satan's help with household chores, committing adultery with both men and Satan, and even murdering a child. Although she wasn't charged with murder or adultery, her witchcraft confession led to her execution in 1650, after she was allowed to give birth. Several isolated witchcraft accusations followed in Connecticut, but the hysteria reached its peak in 1662 in Hartford, where 4 people were executed. The panic began when 8-year-old Elizabeth Kelly fell ill and died shortly after visiting her neighbor, Goodwife Ayres. Before her death, Elizabeth claimed that Ayres had tormented her. This accusation ignited a chain reaction of witchcraft claims throughout the community. Soon after, a woman named Anne Cole, who was considered pious, began having fits and speaking blasphemies. Anne blamed her neighbor, Rebecca Greensmith, who was described as lewd and ignorant. In a bid to shift the focus away from his wife, Goodwife Ayres's husband joined the accusations against Rebecca. Rebecca, who may have suffered from mental illness or dementia, confessed to witchcraft and implicated others, including her husband, Goodwife Ayres, and neighbors Mary Sanford and Elizabeth Seeger. She and her husband, Nathaniel Greensmith, were subjected to the notorious dunking test, which was believed to prove someone was a witch if they didn't sink in water. After surviving the test, they were both convicted of witchcraft and hanged. Mary Sanford was also hanged based on Rebecca's accusations, while Anne Cole claimed her health was restored after the executions. Goodwife Ayres managed to flee Connecticut and escape execution, while Elizabeth Seeger was convicted but had her sentence overturned by the governor after a 2-year trial process. Another woman, Mary Barnes of Farmington, Connecticut, was also swept up in this round of witchcraft hysteria and hanged alongside the Greensmiths. After this outbreak of witch hysteria, Connecticut's governor, John Winthrop, Jr., made significant changes to the colony's laws. He required at least 2 witnesses to support any witchcraft accusation, making it more difficult to secure a conviction. Winthrop also personally intervened in some cases, overturning convictions and sparing many accused individuals. Thanks to Governor Winthrop's efforts, no one was ever executed for witchcraft in Connecticut after 1662. While some accusations continued to be made, they were eventually dismissed due to lack of evidence. Connecticut's experience with witch trials may have been largely forgotten, overshadowed by the events in Salem, but it remains an important part of colonial American history. Thanks for tuning in to the Ancestral Findings podcast. Be sure to visit ancestralfindings.com to download your free genealogy ebook, request a free lookup, and enter to win the next book giveaway. Thank you so much for your support throughout these past 29 years, and as always, happy searching.